Hello everyone, and welcome to the Prince Magnum channel where hot rodding and romance do coexist. I'm your host, Prince Magnum. Welcome to do-it-yourself budget hot rodding Lady Mavericks Unite. In this particular installment of Lady Mavericks Unite, we're going to talk about air filters. Now, air filters are something that are easy to replace. Every vehicle has one, and they're ridiculously easy to replace. But sometimes they're often the most neglected, one of the many things that are neglected on a vehicle nowadays. So much so that I will tell you all, I have seen, when helping work on other people's vehicles, you see some really screwy stuff that goes on with air filter boxes of today. So, before we dive headstrong into this particular video, there's a couple of things that we're going to have to go over. Number one, we're going to have to talk, besides the obvious of changing the air filter in Project Lena, we're probably also going to take a look at how ridiculously easy it was to change the air filter in vehicles of yesteryear, like Project Spirit. We're going to talk about, why your vehicle needs an air filter, what it actually does, and what can actually happen if you're not careful and keep the air filters in your vehicle, change them regularly, okay? And of course, we're going to give the quick tips along the way that most mechanic shops won't give you, all right? So, let's dive into this video. All right, first stop we need to make is we need to talk about air filters themselves, okay? Now, first up, what does an air filter do? Well, it literally filters out the nasty stuff that we breathe, okay? I want you all to kind of keep in mind, your engine is just like, in a lot of ways, just like the human body, okay? Just like it in a lot of ways. Where we have blood, circulating through us, an engine has motor oil. As a matter of fact, the passages, through an engine, you might, for like oil and for the water, you can even say it's very similar to just like the blood vessels in our body. So there's a lot, so now that we kind of established, those of you who are big on human health, and that sort of thing, this will kind of help you understand at least this much. Now, just like we breathe in air, and when we breathe out carbon dioxide. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. Well, your engine kind of does something very similar. When your engine is running, it's breathing in oxygen, and from the exhaust, it releases exhaust gases, just like we release carbon dioxide. Just a little, there's a more mechanical function to it, but that kind of gives you the gist of it. Now that you kind of understand that, what happens when we can't breathe? Well, we suffocate, we die. We don't run. Our bodies don't run without oxygen. Well, the same thing goes with your engine, okay? If it doesn't have air to breathe in, it dies. It won't run, okay? Just like us. It's amazing, isn't it? So, what does an air filter exactly do? Okay, well, that's easy. That's easy. Think of just like we have hairs in our nose that help keep out infectious microbes, and it helps remove dust particles and things that that might be harmful to our body. Your air filter does the same exact thing. Okay, it does the same exact thing. As air passes through, it removes heavy dust particles and things that would be harmful to your engine. And when this gets clogged up, your engine doesn't run right. It floods. In some cases, it just doesn't run. It just doesn't run hardly at all. Just like when we can't breathe right, It's hard to breathe. Our bodies are not running right. We don't feel good. We're sick. Well, when these get clogged up, your engine is sick, okay? And it doesn't run the way it's supposed to. So that's pretty interesting now that we've kind of got that analogy to work with. So again, those of you who are heavy into human health, this should actually make things a little bit more understanding, I guess you could say. Just like we breathe in air and we breathe out carbon dioxide, and how the air filter works. Now, it's safe to say that this is probably one of the cheapest things to do on a tune-up. In most cases, a paper filter for a normal modern vehicle will run anywhere from about $10 to $25. And that's easy. And literally, you can do this yourself. We're going to do it in this video, and I guarantee that once you see it done, it's actually going to be, changing it is going to actually be long, is going to take less time than this video will take, okay? I'm not kidding you. It's literally, it takes 0 to no time flat. You might have to do a couple of things. You might actually have to get out a tool. But by and large, it's going to take very little time. So, now that we've kind of gotten, our visual aid to work with what a paper filter actually does, we're going to cut away, and you're going to see how easy it really is. I'm not kidding you. This is as easy as it gets. All right, folks. The first stop on our journey through this video is the Project Spirit. Now, again, I know many of you would like me to go to work on Project Spirit, but that's not going to be the case today. Just one of those things. But anyhow, on our journey, we're going to take a look at Project Spirit's air filter assembly. Now, really quick, you're going to see a lot of similarities from what the original version of Project Spirit's air filter setup. You're going to see a lot of similarities, from the old days to modern days. It's just, it looks a lot different. It looks a whole lot different than it did back then. As a matter of fact, over here, there used to actually be this metal tube that came off, and it had a tube that ran up to actually right in here on Project Spirit. With our grill not being there, this makes it easy to show you. But it would actually run right to here, and it would help bring air back to the air filter assembly, thus making sure that the engine always got cool air. This was part of, in the 1970s, when we started seeing stuff like this, this was part of making the vehicles more fuel efficient. Okay, and of course they put a lot of excess BS on there that kind of also choked the engine at the same time, but you guys get the general idea. Now you'll see a lot of that on modern vehicles today when talking about air filter assemblies, but by and large the technology goes all the way back, to my knowledge, all the way back to the 70s of a lot of what you might see today. But anyhow, to change Project Spirit's air filter, it's literally just taking this taking this wing nut out, and it's the wing nut that's in here is a little bit different. Usually it's just a simple post that runs down inside the carburetor. You unscrew it and take it off, or in some cases the throttle body injection, which looks a lot like a carburetor. But you literally lift the lid off just like that, and right there's your air filter. It's as simple as it gets. Okay, you put that back on, you put the new one in, put the lid back on, and you're done. That was how it was back then. Now today it's a little bit more complicated, but it's not as complicated as you might think it gets. It's one of those things that once you see it, it's like, well, that's not that much harder. And I could do that in, like 5 minutes. It's literally that easy. So now that you guys have a general idea of how easy it was in the old days, let's get to a little bit more of the newer. All right, folks, the next stop in our video is going to be to none other than Project Lena. Now, Project Lena has really kind of come into her own on this series, and has been helping a lot of you ladies out there understand modern vehicles. And they're not scary, are they? They're not as scary as a lot of you might think. When changing an air filter, pretty much the setup is going to be the same. Now, it might vary where your air filter box is, but by and large, the setup is pretty well going to be the same. To understand your air filter box, this is it. This is right where it is. Your air filter is right inside. Just like with Project Spirit, where in the old days, all the old cars, their air filter was right up on top. With modern vehicles, it's usually right here or it's on the other side in a similar spot. And that's pretty much all of them, okay? In some way, shape, or form, this is pretty much every vehicle starting around, well, the 1980s when they started putting systems like this on vehicles, all the way up to modern times. So Project Lena definitely fits the bill, for showing how to work on a modern car, despite the fact that she's a 2003. Now, really quick, I know some of you know that Project Lena is a 2003 Pontiac Grand Am GT. Now, one of the things that makes her a GT model is the performance package that comes with her. And that has all to do with the ram air induction. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as the video progresses, but just know that it exists. But despite the fact that we have the ram air induction, her air filter box is still pretty much set up just like everybody else's. And where does the air come in? Obviously, it's a box. It's got to have something to connect to it. Well, right here on the front, as best as I can show you, there's a tube that runs down to the fender, and there's an opening in the fender. So as your engine is running, it's drawing air from that opening in the fender. This is where it gets a little bit different than the older vehicles. Most of the older vehicles, the air filter had to draw air from inside the hot engine bay. Well, with modern vehicles, as we started discovering in the 1970s, air from the outside of the engine bay is going to be cooler. So that helps an engine run a little bit better. So as the air passes up through that tube into the air filter box, the air filter scrubs away the nasty air, and then it runs through the tube, the air filter tube, and a series of sensors, which is everything is monitored by the onboard ECU. Ta-da! That's modern. that's about as modern as we've gotten. It really hasn't changed all that much. But now that we've talked about that, we've talked it to death enough. In some way, shape, or form, you're going to get a screwdriver. It might be a flathead or a Phillips screwdriver. It could even be a couple of clips, and you don't even need a screwdriver at all. But all you're going to do is you're going to come over here, and you're going to just loosen these screws. You're just going to loosen them and kind of pop them loose, okay? Or you're going to pop a couple of clips. That's really all you're doing, okay? I know sometimes when we start talking about breaking out tools, some people get really nervous, and it's really not that scary. It's not at all. Trust me when I say that sometimes getting out maybe one or two tools to do a simple job, believe me, when it's all said and done with, you did it yourself, and you probably saved yourself a whole lot of money. Okay, and that's it. You just pop it loose, it's fine, and ta-da, right there. Project Lena's air filter. Okay, let's go ahead and grab the new one, and let's go ahead and get ready to slide it into place. Now, really quick, this is where we kind of deviate from just changing the air filter. Sometimes, because of that tube that runs down inside the fender, if you live in on a dusty road, or maybe someone's cut their lawn recently, double check the inside of that box. Sometimes it'll load up with leaves, grass, debris from driving some really rough roads, or maybe you just live in kind of a rural town or something to that effect. If that's the case, check that box, because sometimes you will find it'll look almost like a rat's nest inside of there. Get that out of there, because that'll hinder your vehicle running, okay? And I have seen some really interesting air filter boxes getting into, when I've worked on other people's vehicles. I mean, you will find some really interesting stuff in there. You almost start digging it out, and the next thing you want to holler out, "Look, I found Jimmy Hoffa," okay? Some of y'all don't know who Jimmy Hoffa is. now I feel old. All right, so we slide that into place, and you might have to do a little bit of finagling to get where it'll seal up properly. And again, every vehicle is going to be a little bit different, you know, but by and large, once you get everything lined up and slipped into place, it's really not as scary as it looks. It really isn't. Oftentimes, this is the hardest part of putting it all back together. Sure, there we go. Just like that. And that's as hard as it gets. The scariest thing that you might have to do in this process is removing the rat's nest from the air filter box. That's really it. If you have one in there. And that's all there is to it. And now, Project Lena has a brand new air filter in place, which will also help improve fuel economy, and it'll make her run smoother overall. And we only needed one old screwdriver. That was it. I like it wood because it's got a wooden handle. Wood for the win, right? Alrighty. So now that we've done that, that's it. We're done. This particular part of the project is all done. And unlike some of the stuff that you might have to do with a vehicle where you got to take it in, and we can just dispose of this by throwing it in the trash. We're all done. We don't have anything else to do. Now really quick, since a lot of you probably stuck around all the way to this point, let's talk real quick while the hood is up about the ram air induction here on Project Lena. Now over here is a couple of little air vents. Now a lot of people think that air goes directly to the radiator. Not at all. It actually the air comes in here and is captured by this cowl, and then is forced back into the air filter box, forcing more air for the engine to breathe in. I remember reading that, if I remember correctly, Project Lena has an output of about 205 horses, which is pretty quick for her time. But by adding this particular device and increasing the airflow to the engine, I think the factory claims anywhere 5, maybe 10 extra horses. I've heard some numbers go all the way up to 15, which is not a big jump, but it is a jump in performance. And believe me, it's there when you stomp on the gas. So, that's it. Pretty cool, huh? Alrighty. That brings us to this spot. Alright, Lady Mavericks. Now comes the final tips that you need to know when dealing with the air filter in your modern vehicle. As you can tell, this one doesn't look as bright and as colorful as the one that we just showed you earlier, the brand new one. This is the old one. And that's because it's been used in a vehicle that does daily driving. But many of you are asking, how often should I replace that air filter? Now, most manufacturers will give you a mileage, and it's usually pretty high, and it'll make you think, well, the vehicle doesn't need to be as maintained. Well, that's not true. I would change, in modern vehicles, the air filter every 3 to 4 months, depending on how much you drive it. Why would I recommend something like that? Well, it has all to do with where the air intake is, and this is where the trade-off is from old cars to new cars. In the old cars, the air filter was underneath the hood, and it was kind of out of the way, so you could go 6 months, and you did it with your regular tune-up. With more modern vehicles, I would recommend every 3 months because of where they put the air intake to. They put it right in the fender, and it has more risk of sucking dirt and other debris up inside that air filter box. So I would recommend it every 3 months, especially, again, if you live in, like, where maybe you live in a suburban area and there's, people who are constantly taking care of their lawns, or maybe you live on on some dirt road or gravel road, or maybe just where you live is just a dirty urban environment. However you slice it, change these every 3 to 4 months, because if you don't, your vehicle doesn't run as tip-top. So now you guys have another tip that'll go a long ways when taking care of your project or your daily driven car, or in some cases like me, both. Alrighty. I want to thank you all who decided to join me in today's video. If you enjoyed the content, we try to put content like this out on a regular. So maybe you might want to consider becoming a member of the Maverick Nation. How do you do that? How do we do that, Prince Magnum? You hit that subscription button and turn on the notifications, because unfortunately here on YouTube, the subscription button doesn't mean as much as it used to. Got to turn that notification bell on, so hopefully they decide to send you that notification that, hey, brand new Prince Magnum video up. But maybe you would like to help support the channel. Maybe you would like to help, put back into the project vehicles. Well, you could do that a couple of different ways. The first way, go over to the Prince Magnum channel home page right here on YouTube, and there's a link to the Teespring store. You can get your own Prince Magnum channel merchandise, coffee cups, t-shirts, you name it. We've probably got something that might grab your eye. Check it out. Maybe it might be worth your time. But maybe you don't need all that merchandise. Maybe you just would like to help put back into the channel, and maybe just in a nice, quiet, different way. Because maybe you're like me and you're trying to clear out some stuff from your home. Check out the Patreon account, and for $1 a month you become a member of the High Mileage Club. We're actually working on where with that we're going to have some other stuff that maybe you won't find here on YouTube to go along with that Patreon. We're going to take a good close look at that. What we could do to give you guys just a little bit more bang for your buck. And just think, $1 a month, hey, that's something, okay? We don't have to wait for YouTube, okay? We don't have to wait for YouTube to, YouTube monetization. And to be honest with you, it's oftentimes more of a hassle than it's worth. All right, folks. I think we covered it all. Yeah, we pretty well covered it all. All righty. So that brings us to a good stopping point for the day. To all of our lady Mavericks especially, get out there and work on a project. I don't care what it is. Just do something with yourselves. Remember, idle hands and a creative mind go together like oil and water. If you have a sweetheart, sweep them off their feet and do something special for them today. And as always, for every last one of you out there, if no one out there has told you that they love you today, Prince Magnum does. God bless you, and have a happy 24. Thank you.
Sayer, 6.22 with an over 116 miles an hour, and right now, good time to go get a hot dog while we wait for Cam.